I take my time and say, sound out the words that get. She's always been very polite to everyone. She's never been rude to anyone. One of the problems was that
she's always been very nice to everyone. She's never been mean to anyone. One of the problems was that as she kept, I take my time and say I sound out words. Meghan Markle's childhood best friend just became famous online.
As Meghan becomes
and
more
it's not
desperate
for
for
the
relevance,
reason you
as
think.
her ventures keep
People
failing,
are actually
more
saying she
people
doesn't
from her
exist.
past are going to feel empowered
you heard
to
that
share
right.
their
Nanaki
truth.
Pretty,
The carefully
the
constructed
woman who's
narrative
known
is
Meghan
cracking
since they
wide
were
open,
2 years
and
old,
every new
had
voice
to prove
makes
she was
those
real on
cracks
social
bigger.
media because wild theories got so crazy that folks started saying their friendship that lasted for many years was completely fake.
Think about what
her
that
response
means for
absolutely
Harry's kids,
perfect.
Archie and
According
Lilibet.
to some,
Right now they're
not
young
me
and
who's been
shielded
living
from
my
this,
memories.
but they're going to
And
grow
here's
up.
the thing,
They're going to have access
this isn't
to
just some
social
random
media
internet
and
fight.
all these
What's
stories
happening
about
right
their mom.
now
What
with
happens when
Nanaki
they're
is showing
teenagers
something
asking
way
questions
bigger
about
about
why
Meghan's
they
past.
don't have
Hey,
relationships
school
with certain
graduating
family
class of
members,
2020.
or why there are
For the
all
past
these
couple
people
weeks,
from their
I've been
mom's
planning on
past
saying,
and
and Harry's got to be
things.
watching
You think
all
the
of
people
this
trying
happen
to
with
erase
total horror.
Nanaki can
What
memory
Nanaki
hold
knows
two
about Meghan is
actual
wild,
human
and you're going to
beings
want
who
to
lived
stick
through
around
this?
for this.
That's not how
Real
reality
quick though,
works.
hit that like
The
button,
desperation
subscribe,
is showing
and
more
turn
and
on
more.
notifications because
she's run
this
out of
gets
ways to make
crazy.
everything about
Let's
herself,
get into it.
Meghan Markle
So,
digs up an old high
listen,
school photo and
before we
spins it
get
into a
into why
heartwarming
people are
throwback.
trying to
Meghan's
erase
relevance
Nanaki
is
from
slipping
history,
despite
you
all
need
her
to
attempts to
understand who
grab
she
it back.
actually is to
Every
Meghan.
celebrity
This
campaign
isn't some
she
friend from
joins,
college
every
or a
brand
Hollywood
launch that
friend that
flops,
Meghan
every
picked up
venture
along
that
the way.
fizzles out
We're talking
makes the
about someone who's been in
desperation more
Meghan's life
obvious.
since they were
And
2
the harder
years old.
she tries to
The
maintain
last time
control,
this happened,
the more
it
people
didn't really
seem
end
willing
well.
to break their
And
silence.
this is the problem
It's
for
like
Meghan
watching
Markle.
someone try to
It
hold
seems like each
sand
and
in their
every time
fist.
she
The tighter they
think about
squeeze,
that
the more
for a
it slips through
second.
their fingers.
Most people
What's
can't even
really
remember being
devastating
2 years
is
old,
that
but these
Harry's
girls,
watching all of
they've
this
got
and
a
he
shared
can't do
past that
anything
goes
about
back
it.
to their
He gave
earliest
up
memories.
everything
They grew up
for
together in the
promises
truest
that
way
haven't
possible.
materialized.
We're talking about playing in
For sure.
sandboxes,
So,
first days of school,
Neil Sean put
awkward
out a,
middle
video
school times,
yesterday or the day
dealing with
before
high
saying
school
that,
drama together,
He's in
the
Montecito
whole journey.
watching his
This
wife
is the kind of
attend
friendship
events
where
that
you
wouldn't
don't
have been
even
on her
have to
radar
explain
before.
yourself,
Watching her
because
chase
the other
relevance
person already
through
knows your
ventures
entire
that keep
story.
failing,
They've lived
watching
it
the
with
past
you.
catch
There are
up,
photos
and
of them
he's stuck
together
because
going back
admitting
many
any
years.
of this
So,
publicly would mean
he's a
admitting
very
he was wrong
complicated
about
and
everything.
depressed and not
It would
smart
mean
man who is
facing the
looking for a
reality
role.
that maybe the people
Not
who
just
warned
one or
him
two pictures,
just saw
but so
what
many
he couldn't
snapshots
see.
of a
The
real-lived
question
friendship.
isn't whether more
Trips
people
they
are going to
took,
speak up.
birthdays
The
they
question
celebrated,
is how many more
random
and how
everyday
loud
moments
they're
that got
gonna
captured
get.
on
Because
camera.
as long as
The
Meghan
kind of
keeps
stuff
trying
you
to stay
can't
in the
fake even if you
spotlight,
try.
the people who knew
And
her
here's something that'll
before
totally
Meghan
blow your
Markle's
mind.
longtime BFF,
There's this
Jessica
famous photo
Mulroney
of
has
teenage
split from her
Meghan
husband
and
Ben
Nanaki
after
standing
16
right
years.
outside
Split
Buckingham
confirmation
Palace
are going to keep
during a trip to
sharing
the
their
UK.
experiences.
Can you imagine a
and
young
eventually,
Meghan
the gap
Markle
between the
probably
public
dreaming
image
about
and the
princes and
reality
fairy tales like
becomes
so many
impossible
teenage
to
girls
ignore.
do?
That's the
Standing in
nightmare
front of
Harry's
the
living
very
through
palace
right
she'd
now.
one day
So
walk into
here we
as an
are,
actual
Ninaki
duchess.
Pretty, a
Meghan
woman
Markle
who's known
plans to
Meghan
leave
since
Prince
they were
Harry
2
to
years
become a
old,
billionaire
has to go
and
viral
run for the
defending
governor
her
of
own
California.
existence.
And
Because
here's
the
the
truth
kicker.
about their
He
friendship
believes her
doesn't
next
fit the
move.
narrative people
She had
wanna
no clue what was
believe.
waiting for
That's
her.
where
No idea that
we're
years
at.
later she'd be
When
living that
childhood
fantasy
best friends become
and then
conspiracy
watching it all
theory
fall apart.
battlegrounds, when
That
decades
photo is
of
like this
shared
weird
history
time
get
capsule
questioned
moment
and
that makes the
attacked.
whole story
Harry
even
was,
crazier. Now, royal book writer
Meghan
Tom
was,
Bauer actually looked into their friendship when he was doing all his research.
Something seriously
H for his
wrong
book.
with the picture
This
being
isn't just
painted.
internet
The
gossip
harder
or some
anyone
tabloid
tries
making stuff up.
to erase
Bauer is the
the
kind of guy who
past,
digs
the more
deep,
attention it gets.
talks to real
and that's
people,
exactly what's
finds the
happening
actual
here.
story.
Meghan spent
and royal
years
expert
building this
Kinsey.
carefully crafted
She didn't just
image,
take Nanaki's
controlling
word for it
every
either.
detail of
The
the story
royals
she
owe me.
wanted people to
A Harry
believe.
owes
but
me.
you can't
A
control
Meghan
what
owes
people
me.
who actually
Meghan
knew
Markle's
you
a
remember.
strange.
You
She
can't
went out
rewrite
of her way to
history when there
stand
are
up for her,
photos, memories,
saying straight
and
up that
real
she's
human
talked to
beings who
Nanaki
lived
face to
through it
face,
all.
had real
Ninaki's not some
conversations with
random
her,
person making
and knows
stuff
for a
up
fact
online.
she's exactly
She's someone
who she
with
says
3
she
decades
is.
of
Kinsey
first-hand
basically told
experience.
people to
Now
stop
you get
creating
to be
drama
part of
where there isn't
rebuilding.
any,
I know
and
sometimes
focus
people
on
say,
what
"How many
actually
times do we need
matters.
to rebuild?" But you know
So,
what? We are going
when
to.
you've got people
And no
online
amount of
suddenly saying
conspiracy theories or
Nanaki isn't
attacks
real,
can
or that that this friendship that lasted
The
for
truth
many
has
years
this
was
funny way
somehow
of
fake.
surfacing eventually,
It's honestly
no matter
silly.
how deep you try to
Like,
bury it.
what
And
are they
Harry,
going to say
he's
next?
watching his
That all
entire
those
world
childhood photos
crumble
were
around him.
photoshopped?
The
What if the
promises
tears
haven't
you
come
saw
true.
weren't real?
The ventures pictures
What if
keep
grief,
failing, the
something
past keeps
sacred,
catching
raw,
up,
and painfully
and he can't
human,
say a word about
that Tom
any of
Bauer
it
made
because
her up for
admitting
his
the
book.
truth means
It's
admitting
ridiculous.
he gave up
Here's what makes this
everything
friendship so
for
important,
nothing.
though.
That's the real
Nanaki
tragedy
didn't just
here.
know
He's
Meghan as the
trapped in a
polished,
life that looks
camera-ready
nothing like
duchess,
what he
or
was
even as
told
the
it would
actress
be.
trying to make it in
Surrounded by the
Hollywood.
wreckage of
She knew
burned
her before all
bridges
of that.
and failed dreams.
Before there was an
Meghan
image to
Markle
protect.
gifted Khloe Kardashian
Before there
a
were
lavish
PR
basket
teams
featuring
writing
her
every
as ever
statement.
products,
Before
including
every
wine,
move was
honey,
planned
and
for
fresh
maximum
produce.
impact.
Unable to even
Nanaki
acknowledge
watched
what's right in
Meghan
front of
change
him.
from a
The
regular
question
kid with
everyone's
big
asking
dreams
is simple.
into
How much
someone
longer
totally
can this
determined to
actually
make those
last?
dreams
How
happen,
long before
no
the gap
matter what
between
it
the
took.
public image
Meghan
and the
Markle just
reality
experienced
becomes
one of the
too
most
obvious to
embarrassing nights of
ignore?
her
How
post-royal
long before
life,
Harry
and
finally
it all went down at
admits
what was
whatever-
supposed to be a cozy women.
She saw the ambition
big goals
kicking in early, the drive that wouldn't quit, the way relationships and opportunities got approached. She was there for the messy parts, the real parts, the parts that don't make it into the Instagram version of someone's life. And that's exactly what makes what happened next so incredibly telling.
Because when you've known someone since you were both in diapers, when you shared 3 decades of history together, walking away from that friendship doesn't just happen by accident.
So what happened
to this supposedly unbreakable friendship? Here's where things get really messy. And so did so many other people whose names we know and whose names we do not know. Stephen Clark, his life mattered.
The friendship didn't just fade away naturally like so many childhood bonds do when people grow up and move in different directions. There was no slow drift,
no
gradual growing apart.
We just lost touch over the years situation.
This thing ended abruptly, like someone flipped a switch and 3 decades of history just got erased overnight. That's what tells you everything you need to know. As Meghan's relationship with Prince Harry started getting serious,
something weird started happening. Old friends, people who had been in her life for years just started disappearing. Prince Harry will not make Meghan Markle a billionaire. She wants to be a billionaire.
One by one, long-time connections
a new
got
man.
quietly cut off.
At
It wasn't
some
just
point, if
Nanaki
it's
either.
offered up,
There's a whole
it may.
pattern here
One
of
by
people
one,
who knew
long-time connections
pre-royal
got
Meghan
quietly cut
suddenly
off.
finding
It
themselves
wasn't
on
just
the outside
Nanaki
looking
either.
in.
There's a
And
whole
Nanaki,
pattern here of
she was
people
one of
who
the
knew
biggest
pre-royal
casualties.
Meghan,
The woman
suddenly
who'd
finding
been by
themselves on the
Meghan's
outside
side
looking
since
in.
they were
And
toddlers,
Nanaki,
who'd
she
seen
was one of the
every
biggest
phase
losses.
of her life,
The
who
woman
knew her
who'd been
better
by
than
Meghan's
almost
side
anyone,
since they were
suddenly
toddlers,
found herself
who'd seen
completely
every
shut
stage
out.
of her
No
life,
explanation,
who knew
no
her better
big
than
fight that
almost
people heard about,
anyone,
just cut off.
suddenly
Done.
found herself
Erased from
completely
Meghan's
shut
new
out.
narrative, like
No
those 3
explanation,
decades
no
together
big fight
never
that people
even
heard
happened.
about, just cut off. Done. Erased from Meghan's new story like those 3 decades together never even happened. That the man she had told him about in March 2016 earlier was Harry
away
now.
from a
Think
friendship
about what
that
that
spans
actually
nearly your
means for a
entire
second.
life without
You don't
a really
just walk away
specific
from a
reason.
friendship that
This
covers
isn't like
nearly your entire
unfollowing
life
someone on social
without a
media.
really
This is
specific
someone who
reason.
knew you
This
before you
isn't like
even had
unfollowing
memories.
someone on social
Who was
media.
there for every
This is
major
someone who knew
moment,
you before
every
you even had
struggle,
memories.
every triumph.
Who was there for
Walking
every
away
major
from that
moment,
takes a
every
conscious
struggle,
decision.
every success.
And here's the thing
Walking
that should
away
make
from
anyone
that takes a
pause.
deliberate
Nanaki
decision.
knew too much.
And here's the
She'd
thing that
seen
should
the
make
real
anyone
Meghan,
pause.
the one before the fame,
Nanaki knew
before
too much.
Hollywood,
She'd
before
seen
the
the real
Duchess
Meghan,
title, and
the one before
Thomas
the
Markle
fame,
just broke his
before
silence,
Hollywood,
revealing shocking
before the
secrets about
Duchess
Meghan that
title.
nobody saw
And Thomas
coming.
Markle just broke
In a
his
stunning
silence,
move.
carefully
revealing
managed
shocking
public
secrets
image.
about
She
Meghan
knew the
that
girl
nobody
who
saw
wasn't
coming.
performing for cameras,
In a stunning
who
mood,
hadn't perfected the art
carefully
of saying
managed
exactly
public
the right
image.
thing at
She knew
exactly
the girl
the right
who wasn't
moment.
performing for
That version
cameras,
of Meghan,
who hadn't
the one
perfected
Nanaki
the
grew
art
up
of
with,
saying
that's not
exactly the
necessarily
right
the
thing at
version that
exactly
works
the
in the
right
royal
moment.
spotlight.
That
When
version
you're
of
trying to
Meghan,
build a
the one
specific
Nanaki
image,
grew
when
up
you're
with,
crafting
that's
a
not
narrative
necessarily
about who
the
you
version
are
that
and
works
where
in
you
the
came
royal
from,
spotlight.
people who
When you're
remember
trying
the
to build a
unfiltered
specific
version
image,
of you
when
become
you're creating a
complicated.
story about
They've got
who you are
stories that
and
might
where
not
you
fit the
came
new
from.
story
People who
you're
remember
telling.
the
They remember
unfiltered
things you
version
might
of you become
prefer stayed in the
complicated.
past.
They've got
Understand
stories
she
that
couldn't
might
be
not
number
fit the
one.
new
There's
story
only
you're
one
telling.
number one in
They
the
remember
monarchy,
things
and
you
she
might
didn't
prefer
understand
stayed in the
hierarchy,
past.
and she thought it was
Understand
And
she couldn't
Nanaki,
be number
she had
one.
3
There was only
decades
one
worth of
number one in the
memories,
monarchy,
insights,
and she
and
didn't
inside
understand
knowledge about
hierarchy.
who Meghan
And she
really
thought
was
that.
before
In
the
the
world was
Naki,
watching.
she
That's
had
the
3
kind of
decades
thing
worth
that
of
could
memories,
become
insights,
seriously
and inside knowledge
inconvenient
about who
when you're
Meghan
trying to
really
control
was
your
before the
narrative.
world was
So,
watching.
yeah, the fact
That's
that
the kind of
friendship
thing
got
that
cut
could
off
become
right as
seriously
Meghan was
inconvenient
transitioning into
when you're
royal
trying to
life,
control
that's
your
not a
story.
coincidence. That's
So
a choice.
yeah,
And it's a
the
choice
fact that this friendship
says
got
a
cut
lot
off
about
right
what
as
matters
Meghan
more.
was moving into
Decades
royal
of
life,
genuine friendship
that's not a
or
coincidence.
protecting a
That's a
carefully
choice.
constructed
And it's
image.
a choice that
What
says
makes
a lot
this
about what
even more
matters
telling
more.
is that
Decades of
Meghan, you
genuine
might want to
friendship
buckle
or
up,
protecting a
because your
carefully built guilt image. What makes this even more telling is that, Meghan, you might want to buckle up because your ex-bestie Nanaki Pretty just dropped a mysterious message on X. The tweet reads, Nanaki wasn't the only one. She's just the most visible example because of how long they've known each other, and because she's been willing to talk about it. But the pattern repeats itself over and over. People who knew Meghan before the fame, before the royal wedding, before the glossy magazine covers, they've got a way of ending up on the outside. It's like there's this dividing line, and everyone who knew the old Meghan got left on the wrong side of it. You've got to wonder what Harry thinks when he sees that pattern. Did he notice all these longtime friends disappearing? Did he ask questions about why someone Meghan had known since age 2 suddenly wasn't in the picture anymore? Yeah, she wants to be a billionaire. So, who will a new man at some point? If it's offered up, it might happen. That is why she's constantly. Or was he caught up in everything else to see what was happening? Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Nanaki hasn't just been sitting quietly in the background. She's actually talked about Meghan over the years, and what she shared paints a pretty revealing picture. This isn't someone trying to get attention. This is someone who watched a 3-decade friendship disappear and finally decided to share what she saw. One of the biggest things Nanaki's mentioned is Meghan's obsession with princesses. From a really young age. Ladies and gentlemen, grab your popcorn because now we'll uncover the details of. We're not talking about normal little girl Disney dreams. This was something more intense. Meghan was genuinely captivated by royal life, the glamour, the status, everything that came with it. That photo of teenage Meghan outside Buckingham Palace, that wasn't just some random tourist moment. She was drawn to that world in a way that went beyond casual interest. It's wild to think about now knowing how everything played out. But here's what really stands out. Nanaki's talked about how Meghan approached relationships. And this is where things get uncomfortable. Royal life.
There was
strategy
by birth,
involved. I will give him that duty,
thinking,
that respect.
Several moves ahead.
I will.
Relationships
Some
weren't
of you
just
don't
about
want
connection
to,
or building
but I
something
will.
genuine.
But
they were about what those
there was
relationships
strategy
could do,
involved,
where they could
planning,
lead, what
thinking
doors
several
they could
moves
open.
ahead.
And when a
Relationships weren't just about connection or building something genuine.
When things would end.
They were about
Not
what those
gradually,
relationships
but
could
just
do,
done.
where
Moving
they
on
could
to the
lead,
next thing.
what doors they could
Trevor
open.
Engelson,
And when a
Meghan's
relationship
first
stopped
husband.
serving its
Nanaki
purpose,
saw that whole
that's when
relationship
things would
from
end.
the beginning.
Not
Trevor
gradually,
was there
but just
during
done.
the struggling
Moving on
actress
to the
years
next
when
thing.
Meghan was
Take Trevor
grinding it out in
Engelson,
Hollywood,
Meghan's
dealing
first
with
husband.
auditions.
Nanaki
and
saw that whole
I'm so glad you
relationship
guys
from
get
the
to meet Courtney
beginning.
as well.
Trevor
We've been
was there
friends
during
since
the
college,
struggling
just so you
actress
know.
years when Meghan was grinding it out in Hollywood, dealing with auditions.
He was
and I'm so
supportive.
glad
they built
you
a life
guys
together.
get to meet
but
Courtney
then Meghan
as well.
landed Suits,
We've been friends since
then
college.
watching her
Just
move
so you
on
know,
and realizing
it's really
they
in
weren't going to
rejections.
be part of it.
He was
Trevor
supportive.
Was there through
they
the
built a
struggling
life
years
together.
and got left
but then
behind
Meghan landed
when
Suits, and
came.
suddenly things
Nanaki
were
knew
different.
her from toddlerhood
She had real
and got
fame,
erased when royal
connections
life
that
started.
mattered. And not long after that career breakthrough, the marriage fell apart. The timing of it all fits into a pattern that's hard to ignore. What Nanaki observed was this cycle that kept repeating. People would be important to Meghan, would play a big role in her life or whatever stage she was in. But once that stage ended, once those people had served their purpose, they get thrown away. It wasn't just romantic relationships either. It was friendships, professional connections. Did you miss the good old word salad? Well, Meghan Markle is back serving it with a side of self-promotion and a garnish of forced relatability. Picture family dynamics. There was this constant cycle of people coming in and then being pushed out when they no longer fit the new version of her life. The really telling part is how clean the breaks were. When Meghan was done with someone, there wasn't messy back and forth or attempts to fix things. It was just over. And for Nanaki, who'd been there since age 2, who thought their friendship was different, getting cut off the same way everyone else did, must have been heartbreaking. But it also gave her this unique perspective on who Meghan really is when the cameras aren't rolling. What happens when a Hollywood star turned royal sits across from one of America's most beloved talk show hosts? Only 4, she saw the ambition, but she also saw the willingness to leave people behind without looking back. While Nanaki's dealing with people claiming she doesn't exist, Meghan's struggling to figure out what she actually wants to do with her post-royal life. And honestly, it's painful to watch. Remember American Riviera Orchard? That lifestyle brand that was supposed to be her big comeback. The whole rollout was met with confusion and mock mockery. People couldn't figure out what it was supposed to be, what it was selling, or why anyone should care. Thomas Markle, Meghan's father, has stepped into the light with photographs nobody expected. And a guy. Was it jam, home goods, a lifestyle philosophy? Nobody knew, including apparently Meghan herself. And that's just the latest in a long line of ventures that fizzled out. The podcast got canceled. The Netflix deal produced minimal content. Nothing's created the cultural impact that was promised. It's this pattern of grabbing opportunities, making big promises and then not delivering. Here's what's really going on. Meghan can't decide what her brand actually is. She wanted to be a humanitarian, but questions started coming. She wanted to be a Hollywood producer, a planner. But if the palace couldn't provide financial freedom, she'd find it elsewhere. She didn't marry a prince for love, but the content deals haven't produced huge results. She wanted to be a lifestyle guru, but American Riviera Orchard became a joke. Nothing's sticking because nothing feels real. It all feels like trying on different costumes to see which one gets the best reaction. Royal experts have pointed this out. They're watching Meghan put her hands in everything but commit to nothing, creating this trail of chaos. Every venture gets announced with fanfare, then quietly disappears when it doesn't work out. Meanwhile, her past keeps catching up with her. Higher foundation of the modern royal fairy tale. We're not talking about a tweet or a Reddit theory. That's what makes the Naki's viral moment so important. It's a reminder that Meghan's left this trail of thrown away relationships and burned bridges. And those people remember who she really is. Trevor Engelson knows the truth about how their marriage ended. The Markle family knows their version of events. Nanaki knows what growing up with Meghan was really like. And as Meghan becomes more desperate for attention, as these ventures keep failing, more of these voices are willing to speak up. The carefully built image is cracking. You won't believe what Meghan Markle's former bestie, Jessica Mulroney, is about to do. Hold on to your hats because, and the real story's leaking through. Here's the thing that keeps getting glossed over. Nanaki isn't some isolated case. She's part of a much bigger pattern. There's this whole trail of thrown away connections following Meghan around. Family members, professional relationships, people who were supposedly close at different points. They're all telling remarkably similar stories about being in Meghan's orbit, and then suddenly getting pushed out. The family situation alone is wild. You've got the Markles speaking out, sharing their side about how relationships got worse and shocked me, and now she meant it to me. I don't know why, but I don't believe him. Lost my dad in this. Communication stopped. Now family drama happens to everyone, right? But the way these relationships ended, the complete cutting of ties, the fact that it all happened around the same time Meghan's life was changing, that's not normal family tension. These are people who knew her before the fame, and their memories don't always line up with the image she's trying to project now. What keeps coming up is this idea that relationships with Meghan had a shelf life. People would be in her inner circle for a while, serving whatever role she needed at that moment. Emotional support, career connections, maintaining a certain image. I was instantly enraged from this 10-second clip. It just annoyed me. And so I want you to listen to this.
Think about
what once that need was fulfilled,
most people
things
can't
would
even
change.
remember being
the closeness
2 years
would fade.
Old, but these girls,
communication would
a
drop
shared
off,
history
and eventually
that
the person would be gone.
Memories.
And it wasn't
they
mutual.
Grew up together
it was
in
a
the
one-sided
truest
decision
sense
that
of the
left
word.
people
We're
confused
talking
about what they'd done wrong. Former friends have talked about this,
awkward middle
being
school
really
phases,
close to Meghan,
navigating
thinking they had this genuine connection.
The whole journey.
Then
this
watching
is the
her
kind of
move on and
where
realizing
you don't
they
even
weren't going to be part of it.
Because the
Trevor
other
was
person
there
already
through the
knows
struggling
your
years
entire
and got
story.
left
They've
behind
lived it
when
with
success
you.
came.
There are photos
Nanaki
of them
knew
together
her from
spanning
toddlerhood and got
decades.
erased when royal life started. Breaking today, Meghan Markle has put shocking new claims about her marriage to Prince Harry to one
just one or
side.
two pictures,
It began like any other early morning. Each story has its own details, but the overall arc is consistent. Close connection, sudden distance, complete cutoff.
Kind of stuff you can't
the contrast between Meghan's public image and what people who knew her say is getting harder to ignore. Publicly, she presents herself as someone who values relationships, who's been hurt by circumstances beyond beyond her
Meghan
control.
Markle, probably
But people from
dreaming
her
about
past are
princes and
painting a
fairy
different
tales like
picture.
so many
Someone
teenage
calculating,
girls do, posing
someone who
in front
makes
of the very
decisions based on
palace she'd
strategy
one day
rather than
walk
genuine
into as an
feeling.
actual duchess.
Someone willing to walk
Meghan
away
Markle
from
plans
decades of
to
history
leave Prince
without
Harry
looking
to
back.
become a billionaire
Just saying you
and run
need
for
to
the governor
see
of
what's
California.
going
And
on
here's
with
the kicker. He believes her
Balenciaga.
next
I
move-
have.
She had no
And as a
clue
photographer,
what was
as a
waiting for
photographer,
her.
this
No
works.
idea that
And
years
as her
later
importance
she'd be
slips,
living that fantasy
these voices
and
are
then
getting
watching
louder.
it all fall apart.
That's what
That
makes the
photo
Naki's
is
viral
like
moment
this
so
weird
important.
time
She's
capsule
representing
moment
all
that
these
makes
other
the
people
whole
who got
story
thrown
even
away.
crazier.
Every time
Now,
someone
royal
from
biographer
Meghan's past
Tom
speaks
Bauer
up and
actually
gets
looked
attacked,
into their
it
friendship
reinforces
when he
this
was doing
pattern.
all his research for
But
his
you
book.
can't
This
silence
isn't just
everyone
internet
forever.
gossip
You
or
can't
some
rewrite
tabloid
history
making
when so
stuff
many
up.
people
Bauer's
lived
the
through
kind
it
of guy
and
who
remember
digs deep,
what
talks
actually
to
happened.
real people,
So where does all of this
tracks
leave
down
Harry?
the actual
Because honestly,
story. And
his
royal
situation has
commentator
got to be
Pina,
absolutely
she didn't just take
nightmarish at
Minaki's
this
word
point.
for it either.
Think about
The royals
everything he
own
gave up to be with Meghan in the
Harry
Sealess
owes me.
Cold. Back in
Meghan
Montecito,
owes me.
the self-styled
Meghan
Queen of
Markle's a
California
strange-
was
She went out
battling
of
an
her way
all
to
too
vouch
familiar
for her,
problem.
saying
We're
straight
not
up
talking
that
about
she's
small
talked to Minaki
sacrifices
face
here.
to face,
He walked away
had
from his
real
military titles,
conversations with
the
her,
thing
and
he was
knows for a
genuinely
fact she's
passionate about
exactly
and
who
good
she
at.
says she
He
is.
destroyed his
Pina
relationship with
basically
his
told
family,
people to
the only
stop
family he's
creating
ever
drama
going to
where
have.
there isn't any,
He left
and
his home
focus on
country,
what actually
the place where he
matters.
actually
So when
understood
you've got
how
people
everything
online
worked and had a
suddenly
role that
claiming
mattered.
Minaki
And
isn't
for
real,
what?
or that
For
this
a life in
decades-long
Montecito
friendship
that
was
looks
somehow
nothing like what he was
fabricated,
promised.
it's honestly laughable.
Remember
Like,
all those
what are they gonna
promises?
say next?
Meghan
That
told
all
him
those
they'd be
childhood
global
photos were
humanitarian
photoshopped?
superstars,
What if the
that
tears you
Hollywood
saw
would
weren't
embrace
real?
them with open
What if
arms.
grief,
Who
something
wronged whom in that
sacred,
relationship?
raw, and
Well,
painfully
I think we
human?
got to start
That
with
Tom
the Oprah
Bauer
interview.
made her
I
up
mean,
for his book.
I think
It's
that we've all
ridiculous.
counted
Here's what makes
that
this
they'd be more
friendship
successful,
so important,
more
though.
impactful,
Minaki didn't
more
just know
free
Meghan
outside
as
the
the
royal
polished,
system than they ever
camera-ready
could have been
duchess,
within
or
it.
even as
She
the
painted
actress
this
trying to
picture
make
of a
it in
life
Hollywood.
where they'd
She
have
knew her
all the
before
influence
all
and
of
none
that.
of the
Before there was an image to
restrictions,
maintain,
where they could
before
do
there were
meaningful
PR
work and be
teams
celebrated
crafting
for it,
every
where
statement,
everything
before
would just
every
be
move
better.
was
And Harry
calculated for
believed it.
maximum
He bet
impact.
everything on
Minaki
those
watched
promises.
Meghan
But
transform
here's the
from a
brutal
regular
reality.
kid with big
Every
dreams
single
into
promise
someone
has proven
absolutely
false. They're not global
determined to make those dreams
humanitarian
happen,
superstars.
no matter what it took.
They're struggling
Meghan
to
Markle
stay
just
relevant.
experienced one of the most
Hollywood didn't
humiliating nights
embrace
of her
them the way
post-royal
Meghan
life,
said it
and
would.
it all went
I'm
down.
going to
Beneath
go
her
off the cuff
before,
here because I
launching
do think
brands
what's
that
really key.
flop,
If there is
starting
one brave
projects
young
that
man
go
in this room,
nowhere. This
the
isn't
content
life
deals
he
haven't
signed up
produced
for.
the huge
This isn't
success
what
she
he was told
promised.
it would be.
They're
And
not
here's
more
the really
impactful
devastating
outside the
part.
royal
Harry
system.
can't admit any
If
of this
anything,
publicly.
they've
He's
lost the
completely
platform that
trapped.
actually
Did you
gave
ever
them
see
reach and
anything in
influence.
Meghan
The
as
freedom
she was
Meghan
growing
talked
up?
about. It's
Before the
turned
rift,
into Harry
before she met
watching his
Harry,
wife desperately
which
trying to
He
stay in the
burned every
spotlight
single bridge
by attending
getting to where
events
he is
that would
now.
have been
He
beneath her
trashed his
before,
family in multiple
launching brands that
interviews,
flop,
wrote a whole memoir,
starting projects that
airing
go nowhere.
private
This isn't the life he signed up
conversations
for.
and grievances,
This isn't what he
positioned
was told
himself
it
as
would
the
be.
victim of
And
royal
here's the
cruelty
really
and
devastating
institutional
part.
racism.
Harry can't
He made
admit
it about
any of this
good versus
publicly.
evil, about
He's
choosing
completely
love over
trapped.
duty,
Did
about
you ever
escaping
see
a
anything in
toxic
Meghan as
system.
she was
To
growing
turn
up
around now
before the
and
rift?
say, actually,
Before she met
maybe
Harry,
Meghan wasn't
which
being entirely
he burned
honest about
every
what our
single
life
bridge
would
getting
look
to where
like,
he is
or
now.
maybe
He
her
trashed his
ambition
family in multiple
exceeded her
interviews,
actual
wrote a whole
abilities,
book
would
airing
be
private
admitting he
conversations and
destroyed his
complaints,
entire life.
positioned himself as a victim of royal cruelty and institutional racism. He made it about good versus evil, about choosing love over duty,
It would
about
mean facing
escaping
the
a
fact
toxic
that he
system.
gave up everything
To turn
that
around now
mattered
and
for
say actually
promises that
maybe
were never
Meghan
going
wasn't
to
being entirely
materialize.
honest about
So what does he do?
what her
He
life would
stays
look like, or
silent.
maybe
He
her
stands
ambition
next to
exceeded her
Meghan while
actual
she
abilities.
flails around
Would be
trying
admitting
different
he destroyed his
ventures,
entire
hoping something will
life.
stick.
Meghan
He
Markle's
watches her
former
desperation
bestie Jessica
become more
Maroney
obvious
posted
by
a
the
mysterious
day.
quote
He
by
sees
the
the
wake of
pattern of
celebrities,
failed projects,
and I use that
the
term
burned
very
bridges from
for
her
nothing.
past catching up
It
with
would
her,
mean
the
facing the
voices of
fact that
people
he
like
gave up
Minaki
everything
getting
that
louder,
mattered for
and he
promises
can't say anything
that were
because
never
saying
going to
something
happen. So what does he do? He stays silent. He stands next to Meghan while she flails around trying different ventures, hoping something will stick. He watches her desperation become more obvious by the day. He sees a pattern of failed projects, the burned bridges from her past catching up with her, the voices of people like Nanaki getting louder, and he can't say anything because saying something means admitting he was wrong. It means admitting that everyone who warned him might have had a point. Is when Meghan Markle goes to meet Harry's friends for the first time, and they're all his old mates from the royal days. They've all been. It means facing the reality that he traded a life of genuine purpose and family connection for a life of chasing attention in Montecito. The life they're living now is nothing like what Meghan promised. She told him they'd be bigger than the royal family. that they'd have more freedom and more impact.
And Harry,
instead,
he's stuck
they're
watching
watching their
crumble,
importance
unable
slip
to
away
admit
while
what's
Meghan
really
can't
happening,
figure out
unable
what she
to go
wants
back
to be.
to what he
The
gave
carefully
up, just
built
trapped
story
in a
about
situation
escaping
that
toxic
gets more
institutions
uncomfortable every
and
single
living
day.
authentically
Here's
is
what
falling
should
apart
absolutely
because the
terrify
life they're
Harry
actually
about
living
Nanaki's
doesn't
viral
match up with
moment.
the story.
It's not just that
Oh,
one
Meghan,
friend is speaking
you
up.
might want to
It's
buckle
what
up
this
because your
represents.
ex-bestie
The
Nanaki
walls are
Purdy
closing
just dropped a
in, and
mysterious
Meghan's
message
past keeps
on
catching
X.
up
The
with
tweet
her.
reads,
She
"They
spent
sold to the
years
world."
crafting
And Harry,
this
he's
image
stuck
of
watching it all
herself as a
crumble,
misunderstood
unable to admit what's really
humanitarian,
happening,
someone
unable to go
victimized
back
by
to what he gave up,
institutions and media.
just trapped in a
No wonder
situation
Meghan
that gets
Markle
more
was able to
uncomfortable
successfully
every single
marry into
day.
the royal
Here's what
family.
should absolutely
Just look at
terrify
who her
Harry
best
about
friend
Nanaki's
is.
A woman
viral
who
moment.
just wanted
It's not
to
just that
live
one friend is
authentically,
speaking up,
but every
it's what
person
this
who
represents.
actually knew
The
her
walls are
before the fame
closing
tells
in,
a
and
completely
Meghan's
different
past
story.
keeps
And those
catching up
voices are
with
getting
her.
louder.
She
And
spent years
suddenly things
creating
were
this
different.
image of
She had real
herself as a
fame,
misunderstood
connections that
humanitarian,
mattered. And not
someone
long
hurt
after
by
that career
institutions and
breakthrough,
media.
the marriage
No
fell
wonder
apart.
Meghan
The
Markle
timing of it
wasn't
all
able to
fits into a
successfully
pattern
marry into
that's
the
hard
royal
to
family.
ignore. What
Just
Nanaki
look at who her
observed
best
was
friend
this
is.
cycle
A
that
woman
kept
who just
repeating.
wanted to live
People would be important
authentically.
to Megan,
But every
would play a
person who actually
significant
knew
role in
her
her
before the
life for
fame
whatever
tells a
phase she
completely
was in.
different
But
story.
once that phase
And those
ended,
voices are
once
getting
those
louder.
people had
Nanaki is not going to
served
be the
their
last
purpose, they'd
person
get
to speak
discarded.
up.
It wasn't
That's
just
what
romantic
Harry needs to
relationships either. It was
understand.
friendships,
The pattern of
professional
behavior is too
connections.
consistent.
Did you miss
The
the good
trail
old
of burned
salad?
relationships
Well,
too
Meghan
long
Markle is
for
back,
this to
serving
quietly
it with a
go
side of
away.
self-promotion
As
and
Meghan
a garnish
becomes
of
more
forced
desperate for
relatability.
attention, as her
Family
ventures keep
dynamics.
failing,
There was
more
this
people from her past are going to
constant
feel
churn of
empowered to
people
share their
coming in
truth.
and then
The
being
carefully
pushed
built
out when
story
they
is
no
cracking
longer
wide
fit
open,
the
and every
new
new voice
version
makes
of
those
her
cracks
life.
bigger.
The really telling
It's spooky
part is
season,
how
as I've been
clean the
told by
breaks
my
were.
team.
When Meghan
And
was
there's no
done
better
with
way to
someone,
celebrate
there
the
wasn't
season
messy back and
than
forth
carving up.
or attempts
Think
to
about what
salvage
that means
things.
for Harry's
It was
kids,
just
Archie
over.
and Lilibet.
And for Nanaki,
Right now,
who'd been there since
they're young and
age
protected
2,
from this,
who thought their
but they're
friendship
going
was
to grow
different.
up.
Getting cut
They're
off
going
the
to
same
have
way
access
everyone
to
else
social
did must
media
have been
and
devastating.
all these stories
But it
about
also
their
gave her
mom.
this unique
What happens when they're
perspective on who
teenagers
Meghan
asking
really
questions
is when
about
the cameras
why
aren't
they don't have
rolling.
relationships with
when a
certain
Hollywood
family
star
members or
turned
why there are
royal
all
sits
these
across
people
from one of
from
America's
their
most
mom's
beloved
past
talk
saying these
show
things?
hosts.
You think
Only
the
for
people
She
trying to
saw
erase
the
Nanaki
ambition,
can memory
but
hold to
she
actual
also
human beings
saw the
who lived
willingness
through this.
to leave
That's
people
not how
behind
reality
without
works.
looking
The
back.
desperation
While
is showing
Nanaki's
more
dealing
and
with
more.
people claiming she
Just
doesn't
when you think
exist,
she's run out
Meghan's
of ways to
struggling
make
to figure out
everything
what
about
she
herself,
actually wants to
Meghan
do
Markle
with her
digs up an old
post-royal
high
life.
school
And
photo
honestly,
and spins it
it's
into a
painful to
heartwarming
watch.
throwback.
Remember
Meghan's
American
importance
Riviera
is slipping
Orchard,
despite
that
all her
lifestyle
attempts to
brand
grab it back.
that was
Every
supposed to be her
celebrity
big
campaign
comeback.
she
The whole
joins,
rollout was
every
met
brand
with
launch that
confusion
flops,
and mockery.
every venture that
People
fizzles
couldn't
out
figure
makes
out
the
what it was
desperation more
supposed to be,
obvious,
what it was
and the harder she
selling, or
tries
why
to maintain
anyone should
control,
care.
Thomas
the more
Markle,
people seem
Meghan's
willing to
father,
break their
has
silence.
stepped into the
It's like
light
watching
with
someone
photographs
try to hold
nobody
sand in their
expected.
fist.
And
The
a
tighter
guy.
they
Was it jam,
squeeze,
home goods,
the more it
a
slips through their
lifestyle
fingers.
philosophy?
What's
Nobody
really
knew,
devastating
including
is that
apparently
Harry's
Meghan
watching
herself.
all of this,
And that's just
he
the
can't do
latest
anything
in a
about
long
it.
line
He
of
gave up
ventures
everything
that
for
fizzled
promises
out.
of
The
having come
podcast
true.
got canceled.
My very
the
first
Netflix
short.
deal produced
So,
minimal content.
Neil Sean
Nothing's
put out a video
created the cultural
yesterday
impact
or the
that was
day before
promised.
saying
It's
that
this pattern
he's in
of grabbing
Montecito,
opportunities,
watching his
making
wife
big
attend events
promises, and
that
then
wouldn't
not
have been on her
delivering.
radar
Here's
before.
what's really going on.
Watching her
Meghan
chase
can't
attention through
decide what
ventures
her
that keep
brand
failing,
actually is.
watching the past
She wanted
catch up.
to be a
And he's stuck
humanitarian,
because admitting
but
any of
questions
this
started
publicly
coming.
would mean
She wanted
admitting
to be a
he
Hollywood
was wrong about
producer.
everything. It would
If the
mean
palace
facing the
couldn't provide
reality that
financial
maybe the
freedom,
people
she'd
who
find it
warned him
elsewhere.
just saw what he
She didn't
couldn't
marry a
see.
prince for
The
love of
question
But the
isn't whether
content
more
deals
people are
haven't
going to
produced
speak up.
blockbuster
The question is how
results.
many more
She
and how
wanted
loud
to
they're
be a
going to
lifestyle
get. Because as
guru,
long
but
as Meghan
American
keeps trying to
Riviera
stay in the
Orchard became a
spotlight,
punchline.
the people who knew
Nothing's
her before
sticking
Meghan
because
Markle's
nothing
longtime
feels
BFF,
authentic. It all
Jessica
feels like
Mulroney
trying
has
on
split from
different
her husband
costumes
after
to see which
16
one
years.
gets the best
Split confirmation fishing cup
Royal
are going to
commentators
keep
have pointed
sharing
this
their
out. They're
experiences,
watching
and eventually
Meghan
the
put her
gap
hands in
between the public
everything but
image
commit to
and the
nothing,
reality becomes
creating
impossible
this
to
trail
ignore.
of chaos.
That's the
Every
nightmare
venture
Harry's
gets
living
announced
through
with
right
fanfare,
now.
then
So here
quietly
we are,
disappears
Nanaki
when
Pretty,
it doesn't work
a
out.
woman who's known
Meanwhile,
Meghan since
her
they were 2
past
years
keeps
old,
catching
has
up
to
with
go
her.
viral defending her own existence because the truth about their friendship doesn't fit the story people want to believe. That's where we're
That's
at.
what makes
When childhood
Nanaki's
best
viral
friends
moment
become
so
conspiracy
significant.
theory
It's a reminder that
battlegrounds.
Meghan's
When
left this
decades of
trail
shared
of
history get
discarded
questioned and
relationships and
attacked.
burned
Harry
bridges,
owes me.
and
A
those
Meghan owes me.
people
I'm something
remember
seriously
who
wrong with the
she
picture
really
being painted.
is.
the harder anyone tries to erase the
about
past,
how their marriage
the more
ended.
attention
the
it
Markle
gets.
family knows
And that's
their
exactly
version of
what's
events.
happening here.
Ninaki knows
Meghan
what growing
Spencer's
up with
building this
Meghan was
carefully
really
crafted
like,
image,
and as Meghan becomes
controlling
more
every
desperate
detail
for
of the story
relevance,
she wanted
as
people
these
to believe.
ventures
But you
keep
can't control
failing,
what people
more of
who
these
actually
voices
need
are willing
remember.
to speak
You
up.
can't
The
rewrite
carefully
history when there are
constructed
photos,
image is
memories,
cracking.
and real human beings who lived through it all. Ninaki is not some random person making stuff up online. She's someone with 3 decades of first-hand experience.
Here's the thing
now
that
you
keeps
get to
getting
be
glossed
part of
over.
rebuilding.
Ninaki
And I
isn't
know
some
sometimes
isolated
people
case.
say,
she's part of
how
a
many
much
times
bigger
do we need to
pattern.
rebuild?
There's this whole
Well,
trail of
you know what?
discarded connections
We are going to.
following Meghan
And
around.
no amount of
family
conspiracy
members,
theories or attacks
professional
can change that
relationships,
reality.
people who are
The
supposedly
truth has
close
this
at
funny
different
way
points,
of coming up
they're
eventually.
all telling
No matter
remarkably
how deep you
similar
try to bury
stories
it.
about
And Harry,
being in Meghan's
he's
orbit
watching his
and then
entire
suddenly
world
getting
crumble
pushed
around
out.
him.
The family
promises
situation
haven't come
alone
true.
is wild.
The ventures
You've got
keep
the Markles
failing.
speaking
The past
out,
keeps
sharing
catching
their
up.
side about
And
how
he can't say a
relationships
word about any of
deteriorated
it.
and
Because admitting the truth means admitting he gave up everything for nothing. That's the real tragedy here. He's trapped in a life that looks nothing like what he was told it would
drama
be.
happens
Surrounded
to everyone,
by the wreckage
right?
of
But the
burned
way
bridges
these
and failed
relationships
dreams.
ended, the
Meghan Markle
complete
gifted Khloe
severance of
Kardashian a fancy
ties, the fact
basket
that it all
featuring her
happened around the
ever
same
products
time Meghan's
including
life
wine,
was changing,
honey and
that's
fresh
not
produce.
normal family
Unable
tension.
to even
These are
acknowledge
people who knew
what's
her
right in
before
front
the
of him.
fame and
The
their
question
memories
everyone's
don't always
asking
line
is
up with
simple.
the image she's
How
trying
much
to
longer
project
can this
now.
actually
What
last?
keeps coming up is
How
this
long
idea
before the
that
gap between the
relationships
public
with
image
Meghan
and
had
the
a
reality
shelf
becomes
life.
obvious
People would
to
be in her
ignore?
inner circle
How
for
long
a
before
while,
Harry
serving
finally
whatever
admits
role she
what
needed at
everyone
that
else already
moment.
sees?
Emotional
The
support,
carefully built
career
facade is
connections,
cracking.
maintaining a certain
The
image.
voices from the past are getting louder, and the desperation is showing more every single day.
And so I want you to
At some
listen
point,
to
something's got to
this.
give.
But once that
So,
need was fulfilled,
what do you think
things
when
would
even
change,
a childhood
the
best
closeness
friend
would
has to
fade,
prove she exists
communication
just to
would
defend
drop
herself?
off, and eventually
Where
the
does this
person
all
would be
go from
gone.
here?
And it wasn't
Drop your thoughts in the
mutual.
comments.
It was a
because
one-sided
I want to
decision
hear
that
what
left
you're
people
thinking
confused
about
what they'd
all
done
of
wrong.
this.
Former
And if
friends
you made it
have
this
talked
far,
about this.
hit that like
Being
button.
really close to
Make
Meghan,
sure you're
thinking
subscribed
they had this
and turn on those
genuine
notifications
connection,
because
then
trust
watching
me,
her move on
this story
and
is far from
realizing they
over
weren't
and you're
going
not
to be
going to
part
want
of
to
it.
miss
Trevor
what
was
happens
there
next.
through the struggle